Chapter 71, She Feels Good in His Hands. Zhou Qir's initiative to get close to him made Zhang Yi's heart flutter. Although he was not someone who was easily influenced by women, he was definitely a normal man. And a normal man is not immune to lust. Zhou Qir's pretty figure and beautiful face were very attractive to him. He also enjoyed the process of her taking the initiative. A wicked interest arose in Zhang Yi's heart. His hands rested on the back of Zhou Qir's body, and he skillfully undid the buttons. Tun Tun. Master Bear, freed from its restraints, immediately jumped out. Then he intimately embraced her in his arms and took a picture with the front-facing camera that made people's blood boil. Afterwards, he sent the picture to Fan Yuqing. Yuqing, you're a great person. But unfortunately, you came too late. I've met someone better now. You will bless the two of us, won't you? Fan Yuqing was still desperately fighting for the phone. Ring ring. The three of them heard the sound of a message and hurriedly looked over. Every message from Zhang Yi was a glimmer of hope for them to continue living. But in the end, they saw the topless Zhou Qir being tightly embraced by Zhang Yi. The snow-white skin and full figure made them feel ashamed. Fan Yuqing only has a B cup, and she has to rely on several layers of breast pads to maintain a false sense of abundance when she goes out. Compared to Zhou Qir, who is pure and natural and free of pollutants, a strong sense of jealousy burned furiously. Brother Zhang Yi, no! You can't do this to me, Yuqing loves you the most. She must be fake, that's a fake booby. Give me a chance, you can try mine. Zhang Yi said, well, I tried it, and she feels really good. So let's not get in touch with each other in the future, I'm afraid she'll get the wrong idea. Zhang Yi knew that Fan Yuqing would be furious at his words. Because he understood that he was Fan Yuqing's last hope in the end of the world. What a wonderful thing it was to personally extinguish all of an evil person's hopes. Especially in this way. Fan Yuqing always felt like a goddess, someone who could be licked by men. But today, she had lost her man, in her own mind, to another woman. The kicker was that the other woman was indeed superior and more beautiful than her. That kind of pain and despair was twice as bad. She regretted it so much that she wanted to beat herself to death, asking herself why she had been so blind and hadn't married such a good man as Zhang Yi. As Zhang Yi had expected, Fan Yuqing was almost driven mad and let out a hysterical scream from the bottom of her throat. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Zhang Yi, you were obviously my lapdog. You nuzzled me for 2 years, but why have you stopped now that I'm taking the initiative? That bitch, why did you take what was mine? You deserve to die. Yes, Zhou Qir, it's all that bitch's fault. Lin Caning and Wang Min saw Zhang Yi's message and pointed at Fan Yuqing and laughed. Ha ha ha, you stupid bitch, you were just being self-centered, and this is your punishment. Bah, you totally deserve this. Lin Caning, her once best friend, scolded her with clenched teeth and despise in her eyes. Fan Yuqing's eyes were red as she tried to send a message to Zhang Yi again, but she found that she had been blocked by Zhang Yi. This meant that Zhang Yi had completely decided to ignore this woman. Soon after, she would die in this apocalypse, and Zhang Yi's torture and humiliation of her had given him his fill. Zhang Yi put down his phone with a happy smile on his face. The more this bitch suffered, the happier he was. Zhou Qir leaned closely against him and looked up at him curiously. Zhang Yi turned his head, and their eyes met. He suddenly frowned and squeezed her tightly. Do you think I'm cruel? Zhou Qir's breathing suddenly became rapid, and her face flushed. You must have your reasons for doing what you did. Zhang Yi's eyes became deep. He thought again about how he had been treated by Fan Yuqing in his previous life. He had given her his all, only to be betrayed by her in the end, who had tricked her way into his room and caused him to be eaten alive by his neighbors. That kind of unforgettable pain was unimaginable to humans. After all, one had to watch as they used a dull, unsharpened blade to hack off your limbs, one by one. I'm glad you understand. Zhang Yi didn't want to explain too much, and he couldn't explain it clearly, either. But sometimes there are better ways of communicating between a man and a woman than words. high-end humans often prefer primal methods of communication. After Zhang Yi and Zhou Qi finished off Chen Zhenghao, it got a lot quieter around them. At the very least, there was no more daily banging and hammering from the next door, and no more people were sent to spy on them. Chen Zhenghao himself didn't know that the main reason Zhang Yi killed him now was because he was so annoying. The atmosphere in Building 25 has eased up a little less oppressive than before. Zhang Yi knows that this is just an appearance, and that the further into the end of the world we get, the more distorted human nature becomes. Even without Chen Zhenghao now, those who have already tasted the taste of flesh may still be capable of murder. But as the saying goes, what does it have to do with him? That morning, after Zhang Yi got up, he went to Zhou Qi's door and helped her open it. Zhou Qi went to the bathroom with a flushed face, then came over to prepare breakfast for Zhang Yi. Her cooking skills were average, but at least they were better than Zhang Yi's. Occasionally, Zhang Yi would want to eat freshly prepared food, so he would let her make some. Of course, before eating, Zhang Yi would also let Zhou Qi taste it first, before putting his chopsticks into the food. While eating, Zhang Yi would check WeChat and some news that was still in operation. These days, the very few software programs that are still functioning are actually being maintained by the authorities. In extremely cold temperatures, most people cannot survive. However, the higher-ups always have a disaster response plan in place to allow some so-called important people to survive. Suddenly, he saw a familiar face in the WeChat group. It was Auntie Lin, who had previously gone crazy. Auntie Lin said, "The snowstorm will be over soon. My brother is the governor of Jiangnan province, and he just called to tell me. You all have to listen to me now, or I'll have you all shot. Did you hear what I said? Now bring me some food." But no one in the group replied. She's crazy. But it's a miracle that she's still alive. I remember that Chen Zhenghao robbed her first. Zhang Yi said indifferently. Zhou Qi, who was sitting opposite him, revealed a trace of sadness that was barely noticeable. When I went to see Lin Xiaohu, I pitted them and gave them some food. Chapter 72, Uncle Yu takes over. Zhang Yi glanced at her upon hearing this. Zhou Qi was afraid that Zhang Yi would think she was a naive saint, so she hurriedly explained, "The snowstorm had just started at that time, and I thought it would be over soon." Zhang Yi gave a dismissive smile, put her phone on the table, and crossed both arms. That's not the point. The supplies you gave them should have been finished a long time ago. What did she rely on to survive until now? Zhou Qi still had a piece of spare rib in her mouth when she heard Zhang Yi's question. She silently put the spare rib in her bowl. Lin Xiaohu died almost 10 days ago because he had no medicine. Zhang Yi nodded. That makes sense. He suddenly laughed. In the past, Auntie Lin always said that Lin Xiaohu was the apple of her eye and that she couldn't bear to keep him out of her sight. She really did keep her word. Zhou Qi couldn't help covering her mouth and giving Zhang Yi a disgruntled look. I'm eating. Ha ha. Zhang Yi couldn't help laughing when he saw that his prank had worked. He suddenly felt that having a woman living with him was really a lot more interesting. After all, having someone to talk to made the whole experience less boring. Just as they were talking, there was suddenly a shout from outside. The two of them turned their heads and looked out the window. In Building 18, about 40 meters away from the building they were living in, a naked man stood on the balcony, arms raised, shouting into the wind. Then, under the watchful eyes of the two people, he dove down like a diver. Zhou Qi frowned slightly and sighed. When will this snowstorm end? In the end times, there are many people who choose to end their life because they cannot see any hope for the future. Zhang Yi shook his head. Who knows? Changes in nature are beyond the current level of human technology. As long as we can stay alive, that's all that matters. As the two were talking, Zhang Yi's phone rang. He picked it up and saw that the caller ID was Uncle Yu, the security guard. Thanks to his past life experiences, there were only two people in this life that Zhang Yi was willing to trust. One was Uncle Yu, and the other was Zhou Qi. They both sacrificed themselves for others and, to the very end, upheld the bottom line of human decency. that is why he allowed Zhou Kir to enter his home and become his housekeeper. Uncle Yu, on the other hand, was the person who hoarded supplies the most, second only to Zhang Yi in the entire building. Even now, his household still had an abundance of supplies. A single man in his 40s, without children, working as a security guard. Such a person, in order to save living costs, naturally likes to stock up on cheap instant noodles, ham, and other things. Zhang Yi picked up his phone and answered the call. "Hello, Uncle Yu." "Zhang Yi, hey, are you doing okay?" Uncle Yu stuttered, with an unnatural smirk. Zhang Yi has known him for many years and knows that this is usually his way of apologizing when he has a favor to ask. Zhang Yi weighed up the situation in his mind. If Uncle Yu was asking for supplies, he would be willing to give him some. After all, this security guard at the gates was a soldier for 5 years and has excellent physical strength. In the future, if anything happens, he can be called in to help, to block a bullet or something. So Zhang Yi was happy to give him some small favors. "Uncle Yu, I'm doing fine for now. It's just that with an extra person in the family, supplies are being consumed a bit faster." He glanced at Zhou Kir. Zhou Kir's face turned red, and she continued to pick at the rice with her head down. "Oh, that is indeed a problem. With an extra person in the family, there is more food to eat, yes." Uncle Yu's tone slowly weakened, as if he was embarrassed to speak. But after hesitating for a while, he said, "Zhang Yi, I want to ask you something." "Uncle Yu, don't be formal with me, just say it. If there's anything I can do to help, I'll definitely help as much as I can." Uncle Yu said apologetically, "It's like this. Xia Limei's daughter, Tang Bao, has a fever, and I don't have any medicine at home. She's all red now, and her mother and I are so worried. Do you have any medicine at your place?" As he spoke, Uncle Yu's voice trembled with a plea. Zhang Yi's eyes were wide open, as if he had just eaten a big melon. Good guy, I didn't expect Xia Limei to end up with Uncle Yu as a fallback. This woman really has good taste, being able to pick the next best thing to Zhang Yi from among all the single men in this building. However, thinking about Xia Limei's situation in her previous life, Zhang Yi instantly felt relieved. She looked pitiful, but in the end she lived longer than Zhang Yi, so obviously she wasn't as simple as she appeared. Xia Limei was under 30 years old this year, and she looked like a 6 out of 10, but because she had given birth to a child, her figure was full and plump. Uncle Yu had been a bachelor his whole life, and he simply couldn't resist the temptation of such a mature woman. Zhang Yi didn't plan to meddle in other people's private affairs. Xia Limei was able to hook up with a big bastard to raise her child, that's just her talent. Zhang Yi said, "I see, Uncle Yu, congratulations." Uncle Yu was a little embarrassed. "What do you mean congratulations? We're just living together. You know my situation, if it weren't for the snowstorm, I wouldn't have been able to find a wife at all." Zhang Yi said, "I still have some boxes of medicine here, you can come and get them later." Zhang Yi's tone was light and carefree, but the key words "a few boxes left" revealed a key piece of information. That is, Zhang Yi actually didn't have much fever-reducing medicine left in his hands. But in the freezing cold and lack of supplies on this day, he still decisively gave it to you, Uncle Yu. Think about it. Think about how righteous Zhang Yi is and how good he is to you. Can you not do your best for him in the future? Sure enough, Uncle Yu was so moved that he could not speak for a long time. Zhang Yi, how can I thank you? You have helped me twice, and I, Yu Jiguang, promise here and now. As long as there is a day when you need me, if I say no, I am not human and deserve to be beaten to death. Uncle Yu vowed excitedly. Zhang Yi laughed and said, "Uncle Yu, you're being too formal. We've been friends for many years, and in my eyes, you're like a real uncle to me. Don't be polite, just come and get your medicine." Zhou Kir, who was sitting across the table, pouted, looked at Zhang Yi with a mischievous expression, and made a face at him. She then realized that beneath Zhang Yi's cold and cautious appearance, there was also this cunning side, which she had never noticed before. Zhang Yi pulled his feet out of his slippers and rubbed her long, black silk legs under the table, gradually working his way deeper. It made her legs weak, and she almost collapsed onto the table. Just as she thought Zhang Yi was going to have a snack, he calmly stood up and left the table. Zhou Qi was so angry that she pounded on the table. "Arsonist!" she whispered, her face red and about to bleed. Chapter 73, A Mother with Ulterior Motives. After a while, Zhang Yi heard a knock on the door. Then came the voice of Uncle Yu. "Zhang Yi, it's you, Jiguang. Are you home?" As usual, he glanced outside through the surveillance camera. But soon Zhang Yi frowned. Because standing at the door was not only Uncle Yu, but also a woman holding a child. Although she was wrapped up in a thick down jacket, Zhang Yi knew that she must be Xiao Mei, the mother of the baby. What is she doing here? Zhang Yi still had a good impression of Uncle Yu, but he and Xiao Mei had no relationship. Moreover, based on his experience in his previous life, he always felt that this woman was not simple. Zhang Yi stood up from his chair and walked to the front door. Zhou Qi only glanced at him but did nothing. In this household, Zhang Yi was the master. Zhang Yi went to the front door and did not open it. "Is that you, Uncle Yu?" he asked knowingly. "Yes, it's me," said Uncle Yu. At that moment, Xiao Mei behind him spoke up, "Zhang Yi, our Tang Bao has a high fever that won't go down. Please help her." Her voice was full of tears. Zhang Yi took out a box of acetaminophen syrup and a box of cold medicine, and threw them through the hole in the ceiling. "Hurry up and give the medicine to the child. At a time like this, being sick is no small matter." Uncle Yu quickly picked up the medicine on the floor, his eyes full of emotion. "Zhang Yi, thank you so much." Xiao Mei took the medicine. Uncle Yu wanted to walk her home, but there was a strange light in her eyes. She said, "Zhang Yi, I beg you for one thing. Can the baby stay at your house for a while? I know your house has a heater and is quite warm. But our house is cold. The baby is sick now, and I'm worried that she will catch a cold. Can you help us with this?" Uncle Yu next to her was momentarily stunned. Xiao Mei hadn't told him anything about this when she arrived. He felt a little embarrassed, because he hadn't discussed the matter with Zhang Yi before coming. Now Xiao had suddenly brought it up, leaving him in the middle of a difficult situation. But when he saw Xiao Mei's pleading eyes, he didn't know what to say. In the room, Zhang Yi's mouth twitched slightly when she heard Xiao's words. "Is she asking for more? Your sister Xia, right? I'm really sorry, but in these difficult times, I can't let anyone in the door. And to be honest, the temperature inside isn't much better than outside, as we're running out of coal." Zhang Yi wasn't going to be swayed by her words. Xiao Mei put it nicely, saying it was for the children's sake. But neither he nor Zhou Qi had any experience looking after children, and even if they did, he wouldn't bother with such nonsense. So once the child is let in, Xiao Mei could also use the excuse of taking care of the child to come in. It's easy to invite a guest in, but hard to get rid of them. What if she has some evil intentions? Wouldn't Zhang Yi have to be on guard 24 hours a day? He's not going to bother with that. Hearing Zhang Yi's words, Uncle Yu also whispered to Xiao Mei, "Zhang Yi has been good to us. He even gave the baby medicine. Let's go back and get some extra clothes so the baby doesn't catch a cold." Xiao Mei wiped away her tears and said in a whimpering voice, "What do you know, you're just a man. The baby is so small and very fragile." She then said to Zhang Yi behind the doors, "Zhang Yi, I know this request is a bit inappropriate. But I really have no other way. Big sister knows you have a kind heart, that's why I'm so bold as to make this request. Please, for the sake of the baby and for the sake of Uncle Yu, let the baby stay in your home for a while." She had gone so far as to involve Uncle Yu, who was standing next to her. Generally speaking, if you are not particularly stubborn, you would give in. When asking someone for a big favor, it is best to start with a small one. Then, after the other person agrees to the small favor, they will feel bad about not agreeing to the big favor. This showed that this woman was no ordinary person. Xiao had deliberately decided not to discuss this with Uncle Yu beforehand, and instead waited until Zhang Yi had finished delivering the medicine before asking to let the baby stay at Zhang Yi's house. However, she underestimated how stubborn Zhang Yi was. Zhang Yi stood with her arms folded by the doors. Sister Xia, if this request had been made before the end of the world, I would have definitely said yes. Now you know, hey, everyone in this building wants to take my house and kill me. I'm really scared and I dare not allow strangers into my home. I believe you can understand me, right? Uncle you should understand, right? Uncle Yu nodded repeatedly. At this time, he was caught in the middle and was very embarrassed, but his gratitude towards Zhang Yi made him unwilling to continue to trouble him. Yes, Zhang Yi has been very kind to us. Who else would be willing to give us medicine? Do you know how difficult it is to get medicine these days? Xia Li Mei bit her lip, not arguing with Uncle Yu, instead just looking pitiful with tears in her eyes. But didn't he let Zhou Qir move into their home? Zhang Yi gave a contemptuous laugh and said, Zhou Qir is my girlfriend. Is there a problem with that? Zhou Qir heard these words, and although she knew in her heart that Zhang Yi was just paying lip service, her mouth still curled up in a smile. Compared to the truth, women care more about a man's sweet talk. Even if she knows it's a lie, she will hypnotize herself into believing it's true. Xia Li Mei frowned slightly, as if she was thinking of a response. But Uncle Yu didn't have the same thick skin as her. Zhang Yi had helped him out many times, and he couldn't lose face in front of his benefactor. So he took Xia Li Mei by the hand and said with a serious expression, let's go, don't cause any more trouble. Zhang Yi has been good to us, don't go too far. Seeing that Uncle Yu was actually a little angry, Xia Li Mei immediately put on a face of distress. I know, I don't want to do that either, it's all for the sake of the child. Uncle Yu said to the house, I'm sorry, Zhang Yi. Please don't take it personally. Thank you very much for this. Zhang Yi also said, it's okay, everyone can understand this kind of feeling. Let's support each other. Through the surveillance camera, Zhang Yi saw Uncle Yu take Xia Li Mei and the child downstairs. He returned to the dinner table and said to Zhou Qir, this woman is a bit of a problem. Zhou Qir said nonchalantly, aren't there a lot of people like that? Zhang Yi shrugged, you're right, but I get along well with Uncle Yu. I'm afraid that she will interfere with our relationship in the future. Uncle Yu is the ideal worker Zhang Yi has chosen. Zhang Yi doesn't want Uncle Yu to have a woman around him, whispering all kinds of nonsense in his ear. Zhang Yi has become a little more wary of Xia Li Mei. At the very least, she is envious of Zhang Yi's family's house and possessions. Chapter 74, Night Raid on Zhang Yi's Home. Uncle Yu took Xia Li Mei and the baby home. After closing the doors, he said with a displeased expression, what kind of nonsense was that? How can you let someone else take care of your child? It's so chaotic out right now, no one knows if other people are humans or ghosts. The fact that he was able to give the baby medicine means that he is a trustworthy and good person. How can you keep pushing your luck? Xia Li Mei sat on the bed holding the baby, feeding him medicine while unbuttoning her blouse and letting the milk help him swallow the medicine. She didn't argue with Uncle Yu, but said with a soft voice, isn't it all for the baby? You know, the only thing that motivates me to live now is the baby. If anything happens to her, what's the point of me living? As she spoke, tears fell again. Uncle Yu turned his head and saw her snow-white breasts. He was suddenly a little soft-hearted and a little tough. His tone slowed down, hey, I don't mean I don't understand what you mean. But as a person, you have to at least know how to repay a favor. Thinking about how Zhang Yi had helped him twice, Uncle Yu patted his thigh and sighed, if it weren't for Zhang Yi, I would never have thought to stock up on supplies in advance, and I wouldn't be alive now. Yu Jiguang, must find a way to repay this great kindness. Just then, Xia Li Mei's soft voice drifted into his ear. Actually, I don't think you need to be that grateful to Zhang Yi. At the very least, he's keeping you on your toes, isn't he? Uncle Yu paused for a moment, and said in a flustered voice, what are you talking about? Xia Li Mei looked vulnerable, think about it. If he really trusted you, he would have opened the doors for us when we arrived, and let us in for a visit. The medicine was thrown out the window, and he didn't even show his face. He was obviously on his guard. Uncle Yu was very unhappy, don't talk nonsense. He was being kind, but you turned it into something else. Xiaolime remained calm and continued in a soft voice, I'm not just making things up. I feel that he has helped you, but he hasn't really lost much either. Maybe he's just trying to do you a favor and then hoping that you will one day become his lackey. If he was such a good person, how could he have used such vicious methods to kill dozens of his neighbors? I'll believe he's a good person only if he's willing to let us move in with him. Besides, his house is big enough for the three of us. What's wrong with? Before Xiaolime could continue, a loud shout sounded in her ear. Enough! Uncle Yu's face turned red as he angrily looked at her, startling Xiaolime. The baby in her arms also started crying. Xiaolime quickly wrapped her arms around the baby and said softly, I'm sorry, it was my fault. I was just saying what you should do for your own good. At a time like this, it's always best to be careful. Uncle Yu said coldly, don't you ever say things like that again. Yu Jiguang, can still tell the difference between right and wrong. If I doubt someone who has been so kind to me, wouldn't that make me a terrible person? Uncle Yu was honest and straightforward, but honest and straightforward are not the same as being stupid. Yes, even if Zhang Yi helped him for a reason, so what? There's no such thing as kindness without a reason in this world. He has lived for more than 40 years, worked as a security guard for more than 10 years, and witnessed the ways of the world. How could he not understand this truth? Xiaolime knew that Uncle Yu was angry and that the fire could not continue to be stoked, so she obediently chose to shut up. However, this did not mean that she would give up agitating Uncle Yu. The warm house in Zhang Yi's family is what she has always dreamed of. Xiaolime looked down at her 8-month-old baby and made up her mind. Baby, I don't care what the cost is, I will do whatever it takes to keep us both alive. Later that night, the white moonlight fell on the silver ground, bringing a touch of emptiness and loneliness. It had snowed for almost a month, some days more, some days less, but it had never stopped. The snow in Yuelu neighborhood had piled up to the 4th floor, covering the ground in white. Most people went to sleep at this time of day as usual. The entrance doors on the 1st floor of Building 25 were completely blocked by tens of thousands of tons of snow, making it impossible to get in or out. Suddenly, the layer of snow at the entrance seemed to loosen a little, and a few pieces of ice crumbled to the ground. But soon, a large piece of ice and snow bulged out, and then was pushed out with force. A shovel appeared from the hole that was torn open. Immediately afterwards, the hole was dug wider and wider, and a dozen people wearing heavy clothes and armed with shovels, steel bars and axes drilled their way out. The one in the lead was short and thin, with deeply sunken cheeks. However, he had a pair of sharp, intimidating eyes. After entering the hallway, he whispered, Go up. A crowd of people carefully took their tools and climbed up the stairs in a crowd. Their formation was very neat, and someone in front was holding a wooden board and a frying pan as a shield. When they reached the 10th floor, they happened to meet some residents who had secretly gone downstairs to collect snow during the night. Without saying a word, a strong man with a shovel chopped his head off. Puh! Blood splattered all over the wall. The man fell over without even screaming. The strong man looked at the corpse on the ground and said to the skinny man in charge, Uncle, what should we do? Second uncle said, Leave it here for now, we'll take it back after we're done. The group of men were obedient, and continued to climb upstairs. Today their target was room 2401 on building number 25. At this time, Zhang Yi was sound asleep, while Zhou Qir was locked in the next room. The group of intruders arrived silently on the 24th floor. They were afraid of the height the whole way, but their physical strength did not seem to have been greatly depleted. It was clear that they were not ordinary people, but must be from a special professional group. The group arrived at the door of Zhang Yi's house. But no one rushed over to smash the door. The leader, Ershu, motioned for everyone to stop and shouted to the back, Old donkey, come here. Behind the crowd, a middle-aged man wearing a gray woolly cap walked over. He was also carrying a gray backpack on his back. Break the door down. Ershu pointed at Zhang Yi's house and said. The old man nodded, just watch me. He went to Zhang Yi's front door, put down his backpack, and quickly took out various tools from it. The most obvious were detonators, along with several rectangular objects wrapped in yellow tape. After tinkering for a while, everyone quickly hid in the hallway. Boom! An earth-shattering sound resonated throughout the entire apartment building. Everyone was awakened from their sleep. Zhang Yi was no exception. Since the explosion occurred right in front of his doors, his ears were still buzzing and his eardrums hurt. Chapter 75, The Power of White Phosphorus. Zhang Yi's reaction was extremely swift. He got out of bed in his pajamas, immediately retrieved his pistol from dimensional space, and held it in his hand with the safety off. He turned on his phone and checked the surveillance outside. The living room was safe and sound. In Zhou Qir's room, she had a terrified look on her face, nervously wrapped in the covers, hugging her head and hiding in the corner of the room. The house was fine, and Zhang Yi let out a sigh of relief. Then he looked outside again through the surveillance camera. Upon doing so, he spotted the dozen or so sneaky people. The tools they were carrying were mostly shovels, but there were also steel bars, wooden planks, and axes. It was only when he looked more closely that Zhang Yi noticed the wooden planks looked familiar. It was the red 3-ply wooden planks commonly used on construction sites. Zhang Yi clearly remembered that there were no construction workers in their building. However, in the neighboring building number 26, there was a group of workers working on nearby construction sites, about 20 people in total, living in a house that their company had rented together. When the smoke and dust cleared, the men hurried to the door to check whether the explosion had been successful. It was obvious from their appearance that they had come prepared, and that their goal was very clear: Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi's gaze was very cold, and it seemed that the fact that his home was well stocked had long since spread outside. Outside the door, Ershu and the others were dumbfounded when they saw that the thick, heavy metal door was completely undamaged. "Old donkey, what kind of work have you done? You've made this stupid contraption that can't even blow a door open." The worker next to him angrily questioned Old Donkey. Old Donkey didn't expect such a result either. He said, "This isn't right. The explosives I prepare are fine. Maybe it's because it got wet." The Old Donkey was a skilled demolitions expert in the construction team, but he used all kinds of unconventional methods. So although the dynamite made a loud noise, the difference in power was considerable compared to the dynamite mixed by professional demolition experts. Otherwise, even if it couldn't blow open Zhang Yi's door, it could blow up the walls near Zhang Yi's house. In short, it was not very harmful but extremely intimidating. Zhang Yi confirmed through the mobile app that his house had not been damaged, and he let out a sigh of relief. But at the same time, the anger in his heart was also burning fiercely. "These people want me dead. Then I'll make them die first." A crowd of people outside the door were still complaining, and some had already tried to smash the door with the shovels in their hands. They didn't notice that a small window had opened in the iron door above their heads. Zhang Yi lit a Molotov cocktail and threw it outside. The flames ignited instantly. Zhang Yi was not satisfied and took out a few small white bottles from his space. Inside were nearly transparent white liquids. These were several bottles of white phosphorus dissolved in sulfur dioxide, which were considered the simplest version of white phosphorus bombs. White phosphorus bombs are known as hellfire. When they burn, the temperature exceeds 1000 degrees Celsius, and they can destroy all living things within a certain range. When a white phosphorus bomb explodes, it produces intense light and splashes burning debris. If it gets on your skin, it is difficult to remove in time, and the wounds would be very ugly. Not only does it have a terrifying killing power, but it also has a strong psychological impact. Internationally, the use of white phosphorus bombs has been banned. But Zhang Yi doesn't care about that. As long as it can effectively kill the enemy, he is willing to use any means. The Molotov cocktails fell to the ground and caught fire, but they were not very lethal. The people who came at all passed through the snow, and their clothes were soaked, making it difficult to ignite them. However, the flames from the Molotov cocktails on the ground caused the sulfur dioxide to evaporate rapidly, which in turn caused the white phosphorus dissolved in it to ignite. In an instant, it created thousands of degrees of heat in the air. The flames splashed onto their clothes and could not be extinguished no matter how hard they tried. In an instant, the outside walkway turned into a sea of flames. Zhang Yi's actions exceeded the expectations of these people, and there was no way they could react within just 10 seconds. Many people were caught in the flames of the burning white phosphorus. The down jackets and cotton-padded jackets they were wearing were all excellent combustion materials. Ah! Help me! Help me! The screams of agony sounded like they were coming from hell. Being burned alive is arguably the most painful way to die. Ordinary people would feel excruciating pain if a match burned their finger. Not to mention having every inch of their body engulfed in flames. Zhang Yi didn't feel any sense of relief, so he took out his pistol again and started firing wildly outside. Bang! 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 He didn't care about conserving bullets, and just fired like there were firecrackers going off. Soon, one corpse after another fell. Of the dozen or so invaders, only 5 or 6 managed to escape, with the rest of the group leaving behind 8 corpses. Zhang Yi did not open the doors to go after them, still prioritizing safety. After confirming that the others were dead, he closed the firing hole and then turned on the air filtration system to prevent the smoke from entering the house. Zhang Yi glanced at the gun in his hands. He had used up all the bullets. He couldn't help but shake his head. This thing really isn't made to last. Luckily I didn't buy a machine gun, or I would have used up hundreds of bullets with just one burst. It seems that in the future, he will still have to find a way to get some kind of firearm. Before this, his sense of crisis had not been that high. But today, the workers on the surrounding floors used explosives to give him a wake-up call. In the end times, those who are still able to survive are not simple people. The people he will have to face in the future are all ruthless. If one day an engineer carrying a large amount of explosives really came, he might be able to blow up his building. Of course, this is just an exaggeration. After all, that kind of quantity is too large and not something an ordinary person can get their hands on. However, this also made Zhang Yi forced to prepare for the rainy days. These sons of bitches, I will definitely kill you all. Zhang Yi cursed viciously. He walked over to Zhou Qir's room and opened the doors. Zhou Qir was huddled in the corner, her head buried tightly between her snow-white legs. It's okay, Zhang Yi said to her. Zhou Qir felt a special sense of reassurance at hearing Zhang Yi's voice. Although this man was overly cautious and always appeared indifferent. But right now, he was the greatest source of warmth in Zhou Qir's heart. She looked up at Zhang Yi and said defensively, I'm not scared. I just thought there was an earthquake and it was safer to hide in the corner. Zhang Yi laughed. We're on the 24th floor, if there really was an earthquake, no matter where you hide, you'd still be crushed. Zhou Qir stood up and asked, what just happened? Zhang Yi was sitting on her bed. Before Zhou Qir moved in, the place was very dull, and there wasn't even a blanket on the bed. But after she moved in, the room took on a more homely feel. There was a pink velvet comforter and yellow bed sheets. On the windowsill were her washed black lace underwear and black stockings. It was clear that she was a delicate woman. Of course, not just her own room, but the whole house, including Zhang Yi's bedroom, was cleaned up by her every day. Zhang Yi thought to himself, it's really nice to have an understanding woman by your side. If it weren't for the end of the world, it would be impossible to marry such a woman without a dowry of 18.88 million yuan.